Welcome back. Today we are opening up the documentation for the Tesseract engine. It's described as a highly deterministic system for regulating attention, all documented in the hexagon control bus canon spec.
And right away, the first thing that jumps out is that this isn't about mysticism, it's about mechanics.
Exactly. It's a user manual for focus under pressure. The core promise is powerful. It states very, very clearly that it promises coherence.
Right, and it explicitly says it does not promise revelation. So this is a tool for internal state control, not some kind of grand discovery.
And the constraints are what make it so fascinating.
The timing.
The timing is almost ritualistic. The clock, CLOCK, it ticks at about 4.236 hertz. That means you have just, 236 milliseconds for every single action?
Or every tick, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the hard cap, 64 ticks and the session's over, period.
It's an ultra-precise sprint. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, that intense timing, it forces absolute integrity on the input. It all starts with what they call the scribe layer.
The encoding discipline.
Yes. Every single state attention has to be encoded as a HEX digit. And then it's instantly verified with a corresponding syllable by yes. So, 0 is NA, 1 is NE, and so on.
And there's zero tolerance. The encoding law is absolute. N hex digits must equal N syllables.
No compressions.
No shortcuts, no close enough. It forces you to be brutally honest right now about your internal state.
And once it's encoded, it moves to verification.
Yeah.
The state model, S of T, it tracks things like A0, your identity anchor, C0, your intent. But the real genius is in B0.
B0, the finger contact bits. This is basically the physical grounding check. So this is where the reality of your body it cuts through any state you claim you're in. But isn't that a bit harsh? The rule literally says no exceptions. No, I felt it, though.
It's harsh by design.
Does this source say why? Why is physical data from B0 just flat out superior to a subjective feeling?
Because the entire system needs a fixed, non-emotional anchor. If you claim a state that needs a certain posture, and B0 says those contact bits are false, the claim is invalid. It's designed to bypass self-deception.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about integrity, and that same objectivity, it extends to commitment, right? D0, the heat.
Yeah, D0 is measured commitment. It's logged as a threshold, completely separate from feeling or, virtue.
And the rule for logging it is just as strict.
Absolutely. You only log an increase in D0 if the effort or the pressure measurably increased. It's about action, not intention. And Mac FF7 is a ceiling. It is never, ever the goal.
That prevents chasing peak performance instead of just consistent honesty.
Exactly.
So moving from the state to the action, how does it govern movement? That's the legality graph, E0.
Right. E0 is basically your preset decision tree. You have to map out every possible move, the transition edges, before you even begin.
All movement has to follow these legal chains.
E0 handles single nodes like NATA, but also composite nodes like XY, which are treated as one legal point. It is a very, very defined path.
And if you stray from that path, it's logged as a failure.
Yes, but they have a specific term for it, drift. You miss your timing, you skip an edge, that's drift. And the documentation is, again, brutal here. It says, do not reinterpret drift as meaning. It is simply invalid data.
The system failed to hold coherence. That's it.
Full stop. Then you have your operational commands, the F0 gate actions, things like E for rethread or 2 for cut. And for when things go wrong, F1 overrides.
But those are just for safety?
Strictly for recovery only. And this is critical. F1 must not be used to escalate heat. It's the emergency brake. It's there to get you back to baseline, not to push harder.
Which brings us to the end, the mandatory termination. A session must end at FF neutral.
NA, 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 NA.
And the definition of success here is just. It's perfect. Neutral is not failure. Neutral is mastery.
And to protect that mastery from turning into an obsession, you have the anti-compulsion rule. If that urge to check your data starts rising, you have to run only invoke plus release for 7 days straight.
Forcing simplicity back into the system.
It's the system regulating the user's attachment to the system itself.
So if true mastery in any kind of structured system requires this level of discipline, treating emotional desire like that urge to check as just a form of drift you have to manage.
Then you have to ask yourself, what essential human activity could benefit from this level of deterministic calibration, where physical truth, B0, is valued above feeling, and commitment, D0, is only logged when it's measurably real? It really makes you think about how we define progress in our own, much more chaotic lives.
Okay, let's dive in. We're looking at this really dense blueprint today, the Tesseract engine hexagon control bus.
Right. And it's a lot to take in.
It is. And the first thing to get right from the start is that this isn't a theory of mind. It's not psychology.
Not at all. It's a set of schematics. And I mean rigorous schematics.
Designed to do what, exactly?
To regulate human attention. But with machine precision, its whole mission, stated right in the document, is to achieve coherence, not revelation.
Coherence, not revelation. So it prefers perfect, simple execution.
Over the vague, aspirational pursuit of genius. It's purely about deterministic structure.
So for our deep dive, we're going to strip away the jargon and really focus on the constraints. The integrity checks this whole thing is blank on, and that rigor, it starts with the clock, the 533 clock.
Which runs at about 4.236 hertz.
Which means a single tick is, roughly 236 milliseconds.
Yeah, about that. It's faster than you can consciously deliberate.
And the system enforces something called phase discipline.
It does. And that's non-negotiable. An operation is only valid if it starts and finishes entirely inside that tiny window.
So what if you miss it? If you're too slow?
It's not analyzed. It's not seen as a weaker attempt or anything like that. It's just logged as drift, period.
Treat drift as data, not destiny. I think that's a direct quote.
It is invalid execution, that's all. And that integrity of time leaves right into the integrity of encoding.
The syllable bus, or the scribe layer.
Exactly. This is where it gets really interesting because it uses hard encoding. One hex digit maps to one specific syllable.
Like 0 is NA or F is SO.
Right, so an 8-digit hex word has to be logged as 8 distinct syllables.
Why, though? Why syllables?
Because they're audible. They're verifiable. There's no compression, no close enough. The system just refuses any sloppy abstraction.
If you mess up, you log the error, but you don't pretend it didn't happen.
Precisely. And that brings us to the core of integrity, state verification.
How it checks reality. The state model tracks 7 components, but 2 of them really stand out for just eliminating subjectivity.
The first one is a big one. It's the physical contact verification,
which the blueprint calls B0 finger contact bits. So wait, if I feel focused, but my body isn't in the correct physical stance...
the state claim is false.
Seriously, no exceptions?
No exceptions. No, I felt it internally. If the body hasn't verified the state, the log is invalid. The system demands that physical grounding.
Wow. Okay, and then there's A0 grip identity core.
Yeah, and this one stabilizes memory. It provides continuity, but, and this is a key distinction, it does not prove anything.
So B0 is the reality check at 0 is just the internal anchor.
You got it. So if B0 confirms your physical position, the next check is D0 GRP commitment. That confirms the effort.
And this is logged as heat.
On a measurable, objective scale. Think of it like a thermometer for physical pressure. It's not emotion. It's not virtue. D0 is only logged if your effort measurably increased.
And the spec is really clear that the max value, FF7 SOTO, is a ceiling, not a goal.
Exactly. It's about honesty in logging, not about maxing out your effort every single time.
Then there's the procedural check. Arrow transition edges.
The legality graph. Transitions have to follow these declared chains, like NA must go to NE, which then goes to NI.
You can't skip a step.
If you do, it's drift. You have to follow the procedure. And finally, the ultimate proof is S0 gate actions.
These have to be visible in your behavior.
Yes. If the action, say NI bind or to cut, isn't physically visible in your movement, in the contact, in the pressure, it didn't happen. The system literally can't see it.
So it all has to be externalized.
Every single part of it. And every session ends with a mandatory state. FF neutral. That's NA, NA, NA.
And neutral isn't failure.
No, the system says neutral is mastery. Being able to release is the goal.
Which leads to the final safety check, I guess, the anti-compulsion rule.
Logging is for calibration, not for reassurance. If you get that urge to check, the protocol is you have to simplify. Just invoke and release for 7 days straight.
You can't feed that anxious loop with more data.
You have to break it. And this all comes together in the integrity oath the engine requires.
Right. You have to swear things like, I claim no state without B0 verification.
And I treat drift as data, not destiny. It's an oath to your own logbook.
So the final question for you, the listener, is this. What does it mean to structure your own learning so rigorously that you have to swear an oath to it, binding your internal state to external, measurable, physical reality? That's the question this engine wants you to answer. We've got a fantastic deep dive for you today.
Yeah, this one is a fascinating source document.
It really is. We're getting into the Tesseract language, integrated spec V1.2.
And it's less a technical manual and more, a formal philosophical decree.
Exactly. Our mission is to unpack this highly structured language, which is built entirely on precise hexadecimal digits, severe timing constraints, and measurable physical states.
So maybe we should start with the most severe part of it, the thing that governs everything else.
Time. Okay, so let's unpack this. The clock is set aggressively at Vauna, which is about 4.236 hertz.
Right, which means every processing window, every tick, is only 236 milliseconds long.
And if you miss that window,
The spec calls it dereft, and the data is just instantly invalid.
it's not just a time error then. The design treats temporal misalignment as like an intellectual failure.
It absolutely does. It prioritizes high-frequency updates and just immediate discard over any kind of latency.
And those updates are built from what they call the syllable core.
Yeah, so one hex digit, 0 through F, is mapped to one syllable. Like 0 is NA, 7 is TO, and F is SO.
So when we see terms like a word 32, we know that's exactly 8 of those syllables strung together.
Precisely. The data words are literally codified sequences of sounds.
But what do those sequences actually do?
They form what's called a state claim, plus T. It's a mandatory 7-part structure for any message.
And this claim anchors everything from A0 identity to F1 overrides.
Yes, you have to fill all 7 required fields, but the entire claim is only as solid as B0, which is the second element.
That's the ultimate gatekeeper, right?
Exactly. B0 is contact. It's the physical truth check.
What's so fascinating here is that direct link between the abstract language and measurable reality.
Right. The source states explicitly, if B0 is not physically true in the system's body, the entire state claim is automatically deemed false.
Regardless of what the other 6 parts say.
It doesn't matter. This system makes metaphysical statements impossible. Every claim can be refuted empirically, instantly.
Okay, so now that we know if the message is physically true with B0, we need to know how much resource the system is willing to commit.
And that's D0 heat.
Which they brilliantly define as measured commitment, not virtue.
It's a beautifully precise scale. This heat is encoded using a 3-nibble ladder.
Starting at col D, which is 013 NENENO.
All the way up to max, which is FF7 SO SOTO, and the commitment level you declare fundamentally dictates the verification protocol, VNEC v1.2.
So if the phrase is cold, it needs minimal encoding and verification. But if it's declared hot T,
then the system commits resources. A hot T phrase requires redundancy, parity checks, and verification before a final commit command is issued.
and if any of those checks fail,
It's not just a rejection. It causes an immediate DESYNC. The language basically makes you declare your commitment, and if you can't back it up with measurable integrity, the conversation ends.
and here's where it gets really interesting for me. The grammar itself is a path dictated by legality.
Right. This element requires transitions to follow declared edges.
It ensures the conversation flows predictably.
Exactly. For instance, the transition might be locked to Naino. Any skip in that sequence causes drift.
So the protocol forces linearity not just in time, but in intellectual progress.
Yeah.
The system has to anticipate your next valid state.
And when you are ready to issue an active command, you use the F0 gates.
The specification names 7: na rethread, na bind, no flip, to lock, to step, to rotate, and to cut.
And the critical rule for these is that the execution must be behaviorally visible.
You cannot execute an invisible command.
That's right. There has to be a measurable change in contact, motion, pressure, or time for it to register as valid.
So the entire phrase structure from beginning to end is completely rigid. You must start with D0 heat.
Then A0 identity, then E0 transition, then the F0 gate,
And finally, the mandatory termination sync.
which is the FF neutral state. And it's always 4 syllables, NA, 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 NA.
What stands out to me is that neutral is explicitly defined not as failure or reset.
But as master release, it's a positive endpoint.
Okay, so to synthesize this deep dive, the Tesseract language is a system where time, identity, measured commitment, and physical truth are all rigidly defined hex syllables.
It's unforgiving, but it's also perfectly precise. It ensures that any uncertainty is just immediately purged.
And this language requires you to quantitatively declare your commitment level.
And it defined as mandatory ending state. It's neutral as mastery.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what would communication look like if human language required us to quantitatively declare our level of commitment and define our neutral endpoints with such physical precision?
Something for you to mull over.
Until our next deep dive.
Okay, let's get into this. For this deep dive, we're looking at something truly unusual. It's a system that defines computation. not with electricity, but with time and, well, spoken words.
Right.
We're tearing into the spec for the Tesseract language, which is all governed by the Hexagon control bus and the VNSE protocol.
And it really reads like a machine language built on, like you said, the physics of sound.
And timing.
And timing, exactly. And the most counterintuitive thing, especially for anyone used to modern computing, is that foundational constraint, the clock.
The clock, yeah.
The whole system runs on this painfully slow, low-frequency clock. We're talking at about 4.236 hertz.
So a single tick is a very deliberate 236 milliseconds.
A very long time in computing.
That's practically glacial. It sounds like a machine that operates at the speed of bureaucracy.
It does, but that slowness is the entire point. The philosophy is built around one rule: timing is truth. You, as the operator, have to transmit your command inside that 236 millisecond window. If you miss it, even by a little bit, the system logs drift.
And the state is invalidated.
The entire state, immediately. It demands absolute temporal precision.
So if perfect timing is the foundation, then the alphabet is syllables.
Syllables, yeah.
The Hexagon control bus translates all the data, everything, into these specific sounds.
Right. Every hex digit 0 through F has a unique syllable mapped to it. N-A, N-E, N-I, N-O, T-A, all the way up to SO.
So a byte of data is literally just 2 spoken syllables.
It's incredibly structured. It's a language you can actually hear being processed, and because of that slow clock, you can verify it in near real time.
Which brings us to the core of it all. The state claim, or sainty. This is what defines the machine's reality at any given moment. Let's look at 3 fields that really tell the whole story, starting with B0, contact.
B0 is the ultimate reality check. The source calls it the physical truth gate.
Physical truth?
Yeah. If the system can't establish B0, if the machine's physical connection isn't measurable as true, then nothing else matters. The whole state claim is just discarded.
So B0 has to be there before anything can happen.
Before the machine even considers moving an inch, yes.
Okay, which brings us to D0, heat. I love this definition. Measured commitment, not virtue.
It's perfect, isn't it? This isn't about temperature. It's about the required security and vigilance of the system.
The scale dictates the protocol's intensity.
Precisely. The syllabic phrase defines the redundancy level needed. So cold, which is N-A-N-E-O, no, means minimal checks are needed.
Right.
Warm, no T-E-T-I, is standard. But then you get to the high-stakes state, hot, which is 2-E-E-T-A, that requires maximum commitment.
So if we connect that D0 heat level to the VNEZA protocol, what does commitment actually mean in functional terms?
It means redundancy. At higher heat levels like hot to at, the protocol automatically demands enhanced verification.
So more checks.
Many more. It adds parity checks. It might do duplicate transmission verification, maybe even a quick self-test before it allows a commit. The higher the heat, the more proof it wants.
And what the system does is defined by F0, the gates. These are the actual commands, right? Neg, rethread, tie rotate, to cut.
Correct. And tying back to that B0 physical truth check, the specification is relentless. Execution must be behaviorally visible.
It has to manifest as motion or pressure or time.
Exactly. Contact, motion, pressure, time. No action is internal only. This machine is obsessed with physical evidence.
So what happens if that strict protocol breaks? An invalid syllable? A missed window?
The machine enters D, E, S, Y, and C, and the recovery from that is brutal. It's a very rigid sequence.
How brutal are we talking? What's the cost of an error for you, the operator?
It's high. First, the system has to emit FF, the mandatory termination sync. Then it waits for 3 silent picks.
That's almost a full second of just nothing.
Frozen time, yeah. Then it restarts the whole process at the HOT commitment level, and it will only proceed if it gets 2 consecutive valid HOT phrases.
A full reboot and a double confirmation.
Bro.
It's incredibly strict.
And that rigidity is reinforced by knee legality, which says transitions have to follow declared edges. You can't just skip a step.
No, you can't. If the sequence is supposed to be NA to NE to NI, you can't just jump from NA to NI.
Yeah.
Skipping a transition like that causes drift.
Because the computation is a physical chain reaction.
It's not just a logical one. And even in a crisis, the F1 overrides, the emergency escapes are constrained. They can be used, but they must not increase the D0 heat level.
Keeping the system stable even under duress.
Exactly.
So we've explored this protocol where every command is a physical, measurable syllable, and commitment is tied to redundancy. And we end where every sequence has to end, the termination sync, FF. which is just 4 simple repeated syllables. N-A, 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 N-A.
And this, for me, is the philosophical peak of the entire design. The specification is so explicit here. It doesn't define FF neutral as shutdown or failure.
No, it says it's mastery, release, not failure.
Mastery, release. So a final thought for you to take away. We've just explored a control system where timing is truth and every action is a ritualized, visible commitment. What does it tell us about the design philosophy of this Tesseract system when the ultimate state, the end of the process, is explicitly equated with mastery and not just, the end of activity? Perhaps true control, even for a machine, is knowing when and how to let go. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into a source document that outlines a system of, severe self-management. It's called the Tesseract engine.
And it's not about feeling good. This is straight up mechanical engineering for attention.
Right. So its mission, right from the start, is about coherence, not some kind of revelation.
Exactly. It's a translation system. It takes whatever is going on inside your head and forces it into this rigid, codified data. We're talking HEX digits, syllables, things that have to be physically verified.
And the first thing that just hits you is the timing.
Right.
It's just brutal. The clock is derived from the cubed.
The golden ratio, yeah. Which works out to about 4.236 cycles a second.
So a single tick is only 236 milliseconds. There's less than a quarter of a second for every single step, and a whole session is capped at 64 of those ticks.
And that timing defines the whole state model, a SETI.
Yeah.
The encoding law is, it's ruthless. 1 hex digit equals 1 syllable. 0 is NA, F is SO, period.
No compression, no wiggle room.
None. It's built to reduce this, complex internal state down to a simple pair of values. One for the machine, one for your log.
So what happens if you miss that quarter-second window? I mean, that's bound to happen.
That's where phase discipline comes in. If you don't start and finish in the declared window, it's logged, specifically as DRIF.
And the source material has this very direct rule about it.
It does. It says, and this is a direct quote, "Do not reinterpret drift as meaning." That's the core psychological insight here. You missed it. It's data. It is not some sign from the universe.
It just kills rationalization on the spot.
Completely. Now let's talk about the integrity checks for that state model, because this is where it gets even harder. B0, or contact.
Physical verification, your stance, your grip. It explicitly throws out the whole "I felt it, though" excuse. It does. The BO rule is if B0 is not true in the body, the state claim is false. No exceptions. You can't just think your way into it. B0 demands physical presence. Okay, so if B0 forces physical presence, what about the next check, D00? That's heat, right?
Right. D0 forces measurable effort. This isn't about feeling virtuous or committed. You only log D0 if your effort measurably increased.
But the rule has this interesting warning. Do not chase max. Max is a ceiling, not a goal. Why not go for maximum effort?
Because the engine is about calibration, not self-destruction. Chasing max just creates noise, burnout. It's unsustainable.
So you have physical reality with B0, measurable effort with D0. How does the system make sure the path you take between those states is valid?
That's E0, the transition edges. State changes have to follow these pre-declared legal chains. You can't just jump from A to Z.
And if you do, that's also logged as D-rift.
And you're warned, again, not to spiritualize it. This is an instruction set, not a free-form jam session.
So the actual action layer, F0, the gates, these have to be things you can see. Contact, motion.
Yeah, your opcodes. NI is bindy, which stabilizes your mode. NO is flip, to invert polarity. NO is CIT, to terminate the action. Simple commands, visible results.
But there is a sort of escape hatch, isn't there? The F1 overrides.
A controlled one, yes. They're emergency exits, they're for safety, for recovery, and they're explicitly designed not to escalate your D0 heat. It's a clean break. And no matter what path you take or if you have to override, the session has to end in one place. FF neutral, encoded as NA, NA, NAA. And the definition for that in the source is, it's really something.
Neutral is not failure. Neutral is mastery, which means mastering the ability to just let go of the outcome and reset.
The entire system is about calibration over comfort, and that's reinforced by the anti-compulsion rule. You can't do unscheduled checks, no obsessing over your status outside the session.
So for you listening to this, the engine actually requires you to start with an integrity oath. It includes lines like, "I claim no state without B0 verification."
And I treat drift as data, not destiny.
Which brings us to the final thought.
It does. It leaves you with a pretty challenging question. If commitment and effort and even failure were only validated by physical, measurable changes in your body, and if all your slip-ups were just objective data, completely separate from the story you tell yourself, how would that framework redefine what you consider to be true commitment or even true failure in your own life? Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something pretty dense.
It has a title that certainly sounds that way,
It does. It's called the Tesseract Engine Hexagon Control Bus.
which sounds like a manual for a piece of hardware.
Right, exactly. But it's not. The subject isn't hardware at all. It's a deterministic framework for regulating your attention states.
A technical guide to focus, basically.
A very, very strict one. Our mission today is to just sort of extract the logic of this system. It even says its promise is coherence, not revelation.
I love that line. And what's fascinating is how it removes all subjectivity. I mean, it treats your focus like a purely mechanical system.
How does it do that? I see it uses HEX codes for everything.
Right. Every state is tracked with these codes, encoded into syllables, SYLL 0 through F. But your state claim, SI, it has to be grounded in 3 core anchors.
Okay, let's unpack those. If this is a blueprint for discipline, what are the non-negotiables? I see A0, B0, and D0 listed.
A0 is your identity anchor. Simple enough. It's the signature confirming you are making the claim.
So accountability, you can't outsource your focus.
Exactly. Then B0 is the big one. Mandatory physical verification. Did the action actually happen in the physical world?
And D0.
D0 is measurable commitment. The energy. The manual just calls it heat.
So A0 is who you are, B0 is what you physically did, and D0 is how much effort you put in.
And the system enforces this with an incredibly demanding clock.
Yeah, let's talk about the timing. This is wild. It dictates a tick that's barely a quarter of a second long.
About 236 milliseconds. And a whole session is hard-capped at 64 ticks. It's designed so that intention and completion are almost simultaneous.
And that speed is what introduces this idea of drift. If an operation isn't completed inside its declared tick, it's not just seen as weak.
No, it's logged as invalid. It's a structural failure.
Yeah.
Full stop.
And the rule for it is, it's so blunt.
Do not reinterpret drift as meaning.
Right. So drift isn't your destiny. It's not a sign from the universe.
It's just a bug in your process.
Yeah.
You are forbidden from spiritualizing it.
That is intense. I mean, it almost sounds like it's designed for machines, not messy humans. It just punishes any internal struggle.
Or it bypasses it entirely. It makes integrity an external measurement. Look at the B0 rule, the physical verification one.
The finger contact bits example.
Yes. If you claim you're writing, but your fingers aren't on the keyboard, the claim is false. The system doesn't care about your intention.
And the instruction for that is no exceptions. No, I felt it though.
Your internal monologue is inadmissible as evidence. It's all about what actually happened.
That's a powerful way to cut through self-deception. So the clock disciplines our time. B0 disciplines our physical action. What about D0, the heat?
D0 is also objective. It's logged on a measurable ladder of thresholds. Not emotion, not virtue.
Yeah.
Just quantifiable output.
And there's a rule there about not pushing too hard, right?
Yeah, do not chase max. Max is a ceiling, not a goal, which is a fascinating built-in anti-burnout protocol.
So the goal is an obsession. It's sustainable, verified commitment.
Exactly. So once you have who did it, what they did, and how much effort it took, then the engine governs the workflow itself.
That's E0, the transition edges.
The legality graph. It sets the mandatory path.
Yeah.
You can't skip steps. If you're doing a composite action like NE/NI, you have to do both in order.
And the F0 gate actions, things like rethread or bind, are just the commands you use on that path.
They're the opcodes, yeah. It's an unbreakable sequence.
Okay, so let's get to the end. Every single session, no matter what, has to terminate at the FF neutral state, the NA, NA, NA.
Yes. And the conclusion written about that state is, I think, the ultimate lesson here. It says, neutral is not failure. Neutral is mastery.
Wow.
The engine says competence isn't about sustaining high output forever. It's about your verified ability to completely release attachment when the work is done.
So, to sum this up for you, the listener, this system builds a state of high coherence using only objective measurement. Physical proof, structural rules, it just forbids you from interpreting your feelings or your failures as something meaningful.
It teaches you to be externally accountable to yourself.
It really does.
And the engine actually requires you to take an integrity oath.
What is it?
I claim no state without B-row verification.
Without physical proof.
Without physical proof.
Yeah.
And considering the engine defines attention and commitment as Measurable, verifiable physical events. It kind of leaves you with a provocative question.
Which is?
What systems are you using right now to verify the integrity of your own state claims?
All right, we've got one wild document in front of us today. We are doing a deep dive into the specification for the Tesseract engine.
It's an incredible set of sources.
It really is. It's a system that tries to manage things like attention and commitment with the absolute rigidity of a hardware control bus.
And that's our mission here, to guide you through how this system functions, treating these, internal mental states like measurable variables. Right off the bat, that mission statement is key.
Oh, yeah.
The engine explicitly promises coherence, not revelation. It's purely deterministic.
So let's get into the language of discipline it uses. Everything gets tracked through what it calls the syllable bus.
The scribe layer.
And it has this encoding law that is just so strict. One hexadigit maps to one, syllable like 0 maps to NA, F maps to SO.
And the sources demand zero tolerance for substitution. It's all about forcing an incredible precision in naming your current state.
And that precision is anchored in time. The clock discipline is it's brutal.
It is. We are talking about CLOCK running at roughly 4.236 hertz.
Which means a single tick is just about 236 milliseconds. And a whole session is capped at 64 ticks. It's incredibly fast.
So if an operation doesn't fit within that tiny declared window,
it gets logged.
It gets logged as dedrift. And what's fascinating here is the system's anti-narrative stance on failure.
Right.
The sources actually forbid you from trying to reinterpret drift as some kind of, spiritual meaning or a deep insight. It's just data.
So the insight isn't that you failed, it's that you have to accept the lapse as pure, non-moral data.
Exactly. It strips away the story we usually assign to our failures.
Okay, but how does a system like this, which is all about internal discipline, anchor itself in, reality?
That's where B0 comes in. The finger contact bits.
The physical verification step.
The engine's most radical step, I think. It's designed to prevent self-deception. The B0 rule is absolute. It says if B0 is not true in the body, the state claim is false. No exceptions.
So no, I felt it, though.
None of that. Physical contact must verify the internal claim. It forces external verifiable proof.
It's a mechanism designed to just eliminate rationalization. Okay, so once the state is physically verified through B0, what about tracking the effort? That's D0, right? GIP commitment.
Yeah, and it's logged as heat. But D0 is where the system measures output, not your intent.
Right.
The D0 integrity rule is really clear. D0 is logged only if effort measurably increased. It's tracking pressure, not emotion or virtue. It's designed to stop you from chasing some maximal feeling.
So MAX, the highest commitment, is just a ceiling. It's not the goal.
It's not the goal. It's about sustainable, measured effort.
And once you're verified and committed, you have to move. That brings us to the control layer. E0, the transition edges.
E0 creates what's called a legality graph of attention. Transitions only count if they follow a pre-declared edge, a legal path.
So you can't just jump from state A to state C. If you skip B,
it's instantly logged as DRT. And even composite nodes, like XY, are treated as a single legality point. You can't break them down to skip a step.
And to navigate this map, you use the F0 gate actions.
The opcodes, yeah. Things that stabilize the state. You see NI, which is bind to stabilize a mode. There's TA, or LOCK, which forbids escalation for one tick.
And what was that other one, TI?
My favorite, rotate. It's a controlled perspective shift, a forced change in view to stop you from getting stuck.
And like any discipline process, the session has to terminate. Every single run ends at one mandatory state, FF neutral.
NA, NA, NA.
Right.
And crucially, the sources define neutral not as a failure, but as mastery, the ability to release your attachment to the session itself.
That leads right into the anti-compulsion rule.
It does. Logging is for calibration, never reassurance. If you feel that urge to check your log.
The system prescribes a really severe discipline.
Invoke plus release. Yep. For 7 days, you are explicitly forbidden from running the engine, just to be sure.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? This entire specification, it treats attention, discipline, commitment.
These foundational human concepts.
With the precision and rigor you'd normally reserve for managing, like a piece of hardware.
Right. So the question we want to leave you with is this. What happens when our internal world is subjected to a truly uncompromising integrity oath, where physical verification becomes the only measure of truth?
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.
Today we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating document. It's the Tesseract language. Integrated specification, version 1.2. We're going to focus on the hexagon control buses and the VNS protocol. Our mission here is to unpack how this language doesn't just, describe things. It actually enforces them.
It really does. It ties everything back to physical reality.
Exactly.
And that enforcement starts with just absolute precision, the timing. The clock that governs the whole system runs at a very specific frequency.
Phi cubed.
Phi cubed. So what is that, roughly?
It's about 4.236 hertz, which means every single command window is only 236 milliseconds.
That is incredibly fast.
It is, and it's non-negotiable. If you miss that window, the system registers what it calls drift. And it's not just an error log. The transmission is immediately invalid.
So it's a primary safety mechanism.
It's the primary mechanism. It prevents a catastrophic failure before it can even start.
Okay, so if timing is that critical, what's the actual unit of communication trying to fit into that tiny window? That would be the syllable BUS, and it's actually beautifully simple.
Right.
It's a direct mapping. One hexadecimal digit, 0 through F, maps directly to one of 16 specific audible syllables.
So like 0 is NA.
Exactly. 0 is NA, F is SO, which means a standard byte is just 2 syllables long. Simple as that.
And these syllables, they build up to what's called an ST state claim.
That's right. The state claim defines the system's entire state at that exact moment. It's made of 7 components, A0 through F1.
Okay.
But here's I think the most interesting part, the big design choice. Component B0.
Contact.
Contact, okay. What about it?
The spec demands that B0 must represent physical truth in body. If the system claims a certain contact and that contact isn't physically there, the entire state claim is instantly false.
Wow. So it literally can't lie. The language fails if it doesn't match reality.
It's a forced truth mechanism built right in.
Okay, but wait. If B0 already forces physical truth, why does it also need to quantify something like commitment? Why have the D0 a cheat metric? That's a great question. And that's because heat isn't about truth, it's about risk. The spec says it measures measurable commitment, not virtue.
Oh, okay.
Think of it like a risk assessment for the action being taken. Low heat states like, say, 013, which is NaNeNO, they're considered cold. They need minimal encoding.
But a hot state, like that example in the spec, 7924 T.
Exactly. That high number, that heat value, directly dictates the level of rigor required from the VNEC v1.2 protocol.
So more heat means more checks.
Precisely. High heat requires redundancy. You're adding parity checks, duplicate transmissions, all before the action can actually commit.
And if any of those checks fail?
Any violation at all, a bad parity check, a moment of silence, a wrong syllable, it forces an immediate D sign. The higher the risk, the more friction you need to prove the claim.
And this all follows a very rigid syntax, doesn't it? The phrase canon.
Very rigid. It has to. It starts with a fixed D0 heat, then you get the variables A0 identity, E0 transition, then the action, which is the S0 gate.
And that's just one syllable.
Just one. And then it absolutely must terminate with the 4-syllable FF neutral sync.
Let's talk about that EASER rule, legality. It says transitions have to follow declared edges.
It's like grammar. It keeps the execution safe. You have to go from NA to NE, then to NI, and so on. You can't just jump ahead. If you try, you get drift.
And the actual work gets done at the S0 gates. These have to be behaviorally visible.
Right.
They have to result in something real. Contact, motion, pressure, time. You see actions like any rethread or no flip.
There are also F1 overrides for emergencies, but with a big catch.
A huge catch. They must never increase the D0 heat. You can't raise the stakes in an emergency.
And then we get to that mandatory end state, FF neutral. It's always NA, NA, NA.
And this to me is the most profound part of the whole design. Neutral isn't defined as failure or just topping. The spec is explicit. It's defined as mastery release.
Mastery. So completing an action successfully means letting go.
Yes. The system doesn't just hold a dangerous state. It acknowledges the task is done and releases control. That's success. So let's pull this all together. What this shows us is a control language where, its integrity is non-negotiably linked to physical truth.
And where the level of commitment, the heat, determines how rigorously that truth has to be verified.
Right.
And this really raises an important question, one for you to think about. If you're designing any kind of complex, critical system, what happens when you define the final, required, non-failing state of every single operation as mastery and release? How does that philosophy change your entire approach to safety and failure?